Taylor Greene posted some breaking political news tonight, and it is big breaking political news. Just moments ago, the Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on her X account the announcement she's resigning next month. Her last day, she says, January 5th.
I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026. And I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Back with us now, David Axelrod and Shermichael Singleton. Shermichael, to you first as the Republican in the conversation. President Trump recently said he wanted her primaried. She recently said he was wrong. She stood up to him on the Epstein files, and she won. What do we make of this?
I mean, I'm a bit surprised. I mean, Thomas Massie is also up for re-election, and he's been able to, in a very unique way, pivot despite the president's attacks. I was actually just talking to a friend who's very close to the congressman a couple days ago, and he was telling me that the congressman has actually seen his fundraising numbers increase by focusing on H-1B visas and focusing on prioritizing work for Americans. And so I would have argued, if I were advising her, hey, you might be able to get through this brief moment in time, but perhaps she thought otherwise. Maybe she's looking at future plans, but this is a big shocker, John.
Her people, David, have said she could survive, that she's been raising money and that she thinks she's safe in her district. To Shermichael's point, she did say, I'll see you again. What do we make of that?
I think that was the key. That was the key takeaway to me. I think she would have won in her district. I don't think this is her assessment of her chances in this election. I think she surveyed, first of all, what it meant to come back to a House where the president was unhappy with her. She has a bad relationship with the Speaker of the House, probably in the minority. And she decided that there might be greener pastures. Remember, John, she wanted to run statewide this year. She wanted to run for the Senate, I believe. And that was turned thumbs down by the White House and the powers that be in the party. I think that may be part of what her estrangement has been about, not questioning her sincerity on this Epstein issue. But I think she's got her eye on bigger things here. As she said, I hope to see you down the line. And I think that is a precursor, because what we know is she is formidable. She's one of the most formidable fundraisers in the Republican Party. She knows how to get attention. And she has made this transformation here that is interesting. Still a MAGA person, but much broader in her reach. So, I think this is not the end of the story here. Not the end of the story.
The question is, what's the next chapter, Shermichael? Is it, does she reconsider about running statewide next year? There's a Senate race in Georgia, or we have this conversation all the time. We just saw it in the elections in Virginia and in New Jersey, where Republican candidates try to be like Trump, and forgive my language, but they get smoked because Trump is a unique phenomenon. She actually is like Trump. She actually is in touch with a lot of his base. Do you think she has national ambitions? Is she thinking, J.D. Vance, I'll see you in Iowa?
I mean, I can't imagine that, John. I don't think she would be very successful, if I'm being blunt and candid, as a Republican strategist. I do, however, beg the question, can she actually even be successful in a statewide race in Georgia? Remember, Georgia elected Kemp twice. He certainly isn't someone that I would say is in the vein of a Donald Trump, and has actually had various infighting in the state.
Luckily, on all this breaking news on a Friday night, from Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning from Congress to that love fest that we all just witnessed inside the Oval Office, my top political sources are here on tonight's breaking news. And Harry Ensign, you're laughing very loudly. John King, you've covered the White House. I mean, dang. Between that, because it is a big picture. It's not just what we saw in the Oval Office. I mean, that with what we just learned in the last few moments, that Marjorie Taylor Greene is out. I mean, if I told you a year ago that Trump and Zohran Mamdani would be like this, and Marjorie Taylor Greene would be leaving Congress because of President Trump, you
have shared my gin and tonic.
Would have told me I was drinking.
Look, it's great to be with you all because of our shared love and affection, to quote the mayor-elect of the world turned upside down. It's amazing. It's remarkable breaking news. Look, we have lived in an age of political disruption, really since the election of Obama, but especially since Trump and the MAGA movement came along. So on the one hand, we shouldn't be surprised by disruption. and disaffection and things changing, and there's no real political parties have no real center anymore. I don't mean center in the middle of the electorate. I mean they don't have any core because Trump has redefined the Republican Party. The Democratic Party's in a search and who are we mission right now. But this is still mind-blowing in the sense, let's start with Marjorie Taylor Greene. My biggest question is, what next? She just broke with the president on the Epstein files and won. She says he is tone deaf on these affordability issues, and guess what? She's right. Maybe the president had a shift today with the mayor-elect of New York, but up until this point, that's why his approval ratings are in the tank. So she has said up to today that she was not going to run statewide in Georgia. You know, people roll their eyes and they laugh and they say, well, when I say, well, maybe she's going to run for president. But again, Donald Trump could never win the Republican nomination in 2016, and then he could never beat Hillary Clinton, of course, and he could never be president again after January 6th. Barack Obama's not going to be president of the United States. That's never going to happen. That's what they said then. Mamdani can't beat Cuomo and be the mayor of New York City. So we live in the age of improbable stories in our politics because the ground beneath everybody is shifting so much. I don't know what she's going to do next. I do know one thing. Number one, she's not going to stay quiet. You know her. That's who she is. So what she decides. And number two, this is a granular Washington issue. Speaker Johnson has less than one-hand majority. When she goes away, right? When she goes away in January, that's another -1. I think it leaves them with +2 or +3. They don't get too much done heading into the midterm year anyway, but that's hard.
To John's point about her not staying quiet, I mean, she released a 10-minute video explaining this, and in part of it, she says, loyalty should be a two-way street, and that we should be able to vote our conscience and represent our district's interests because our job title is literally representative, and America first should mean America first and only Americans first. And then she wrote this, and this is, I mean, she is directly calling out President Trump. She says, standing up for American women who were raped at 14, obviously they would be girls, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for.
We are starting, in my opinion, to see the real world consequences of what we're seeing in the polling. That is cracks, actual cracks in Trump's Republican support. His net approval rating amongst Republicans is down over 20 points since January. We are seeing a president who had for months tried to ensure that the Epstein files were not going to be released, despite the fact that his approval rating on the Epstein files was south of 50%, despite the fact that the vast majority of Republicans wanted those Epstein files released. And more than that, what you saw was Marjorie Taylor Greene playing a little bit of political punditry, right? Saying that the Republican Party is likely to lose the House of Representatives come 2026. That, of course, is what we see in all the polling data as well. This, in my opinion, has been the 10 worst days of polling that Donald Trump has had throughout his entire second term. And Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning and stating what she did, in my mind, sort of puts the capstone on it, and also puts the capstone on a day in which the President of the United States met with Mamdani and that love fest. To quote the movie Tootsie, this is one nutty hospital.
Joel, I want to know what Democrats are thinking about this nutty hospital, as Harry so lovingly puts it. But we have David Urban here. David, I mean, I've been talking to a few Republicans tonight in the last 30 minutes since this got announced. They are genuinely stunned by this news from Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Caitlin, I listened and watched the full 10 minutes right before I sat down because, like you, it's hard to wrap your head around it. You know, John gets it right, and everyone knows this. You know, this is an administration that superlatives, unprecedented this. This is truly an unprecedented day where his biggest supporter, by far, I mean, I can't imagine anyone who's taken more heat for Donald Trump since she's been in office than Marjorie Taylor Greene, to her own detriment, has been, categorized as crazy, nut job, etc. Today, yet, she is castigated, thrown aside as a traitor, and as you correctly pointed out, he's embracing, Zohan Mamdani, a Democratic Socialist mayor of the city of New York, like they're fraternity brothers. I mean, it's crazy. And some of her verbiage is incredibly biting. She's not going to sit around like a battered wife and defend the president when an impeachment comes in a few months. I mean, it is some pretty vitriolic language on her part. And, if you're the president, if you're Speaker Johnson, you can't be feeling too good tonight as you go to bed.
Yeah, David, I mean, her likening herself to a battered wife was very jarring, obviously, as you listen to that. But that's how she was essentially saying, because I think a thing to drive home, and maybe she is running for office in 2028 or for who knows what, But I mean, this is a genuinely shocking moment, I think, for her in terms of the falling out and how hard that has hit her since this has happened. I mean, we talked to people close to her who were describing the death threats that were escalating and what this looked like, David. I mean,
listen, it makes the Elon fight look like a pillow fight, right? President Elon, this is a joke compared to that, right? I mean, the president has said some pretty sharp things at different people at different times, and most people brush it off. Obviously, Marjorie Taylor Greene had no intention of brushing it off, and she said, look, she threw open the window and said, enough. I'm not going to put up with this anymore.
I mean, Jamal Simmons, what are Democrats saying right now?
Well, first of all, to quote Don King, only in America, right? We all never thought anything like today was going to happen. I was on CNN on Sunday with Dana Bash when she was
she interviewed her. Yeah,
she was interviewing Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I will tell you, everybody in the green room had their mouths open when she apologized for participating in the toxicity. Nobody expected her to do that, and now we see where this has led today. She's had a week of attacks. Jason Crow, I was just looking at online. Jason Crow has been publishing death threats that he's been getting because all those members and senators who came out and put that video out telling the military not to break the law have been now getting threats. So it's interesting that we're seeing the president and his party participating in the kind of violent, vitriolic stuff that we were all trying to disavow just a few months ago. And so now we're seeing that coming from the president and his allies. And I think that's really tough. But then today, the president shows up with Zohran Mamdani, and he's like soft and cuddly. It's an amazing about face.
Yeah, I have also Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California here with me. And Congressman, obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of the Republican women who helped you and Thomas Massie get the Epstein bills into law this week. President Trump had to sign it because they held on and did that discharge petition. And obviously that is one of the huge areas where she broke with the White House in recent weeks and months. What's your reaction to this breaking news tonight that she's resigning from Congress in January?
Well, first of all, she's shown a lot of courage on Epstein. But I also think it's important that we look beyond the caricatures about her. I've gotten to know her quite well over the last 5 months. This idea that the only reason she's acting the way she is because Donald Trump refused to endorse her in a Senate race is just not the complete truth. I mean, maybe it's a small factor, but she genuinely believes against war. She was an anti-war person. She genuinely thinks AI is a real threat to jobs. She genuinely was moved by the survivors. I mean, she's been in tears with the survivors. And she probably has more populist instincts than J.D. Vance, who's the front runner on the Republican side. It would not surprise me if she runs in 2028. And I actually think she's more in touch with some of the populism that fueled Donald Trump's rise than Trump and Vance are these days.
So it wouldn't surprise you if Marjorie Taylor Greene runs for president?
It would not. I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked to her about that. But I will tell you this. She is in touch with a populist element of the Trump base that feels increasingly abandoned by Donald Trump. And and she really speaks about forgotten Americans. And she will tell you she was for Donald Trump when no one thought Donald Trump had a chance. But CNN probably wasn't even covering Donald Trump.
I actually think that's a great point. She is someone who has been ride or die for Trump. But what is your view of his embrace of Zohran Mamdani and the way he did today? And I mean, every reporter in that room hit every sensitive touch point between the two of them. And he was defending Zohran Mamdani and sidestepping the issues and even said, yeah, you can call me a fascist. It's easier than having to explain it to people. But to see that moment parallel with her resigning, someone who was so loyal to him, I wonder what that says to you.
Well, two things. One, Donald Trump's a good politician. I mean, it would be foolish not to say that. And he has a sense of humor and he likes people who win. And Zohran Mamdani is a winner. Donald Trump also has a populist instinct. As someone who co-chaired Bernie Sanders' campaign, you saw it. Trump said there are a lot of things that Bernie voters that he agreed with. And what Zohran Mamdani has is a boldness. And I think, frankly, Trump respects that. I went out and campaigned for Zohran Mamdani when few people were. And Zohran Mamdani didn't move his issues. He was not afraid of standing for what he believed in. And he was not afraid to request a meeting with Donald Trump. And I just think we live in a populist age. People throw around the word authenticity. I actually think that's a bit cliched. What it is really about is boldness and risk-taking and courage. And Mamdani had that. And even though I disagree with him, Trump had that when he ran. And I just think Trump recognized that in Mamdani.
I have to start with some other breaking news that I didn't also have on the agenda. Republican Congresswoman and conservative firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene has just announced that she will resign from Congress and leave office on January 5th, basically a full year before the end of her term. The announcement comes just after the longtime MAGA diehard publicly broke with the president over the Epstein files, which she fought to make public alongside House Democrats. Tonight, Congresswoman Greene made clear that was a factor in her decision.
Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for. I have too much self-respect and dignity. I love my family way too much, and I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. It's all so absurd and completely unserious. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better.
I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better. Starting us off tonight is MS Now senior White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who's been covering Marjorie Taylor Greene for a long time. Vaughn, she put out a statement, put out on X, and that video statement, I think they matched each other, says a lot of stuff in there. What's your sense of what motivated her decision to announce her retirement?
The fact that she used the word cult-like when suggesting that that is the state of political parties in Washington, D.C., because, you know, I think then when folks think about the magnification of the Republican Party, one of the first faces that they see is Marjorie Taylor Greene. But when, you know, this evolution of the Republican Party under Donald Trump's second term, there were a couple occasions in which she sought to step outside the lines of the decisions that were being made out of the White House. And effectively, as she indicates here in this video, that Speaker Johnson was unwilling to even bring up a great many bills to the floor that she was partly responsible for introducing, that she felt like fell in line with that MAGA agenda. But this is where sort of, I think that we are in Washington, D.C., especially around the idea that there's sort of this a lame duck presidency that is awaiting President Trump, most likely sooner than later. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is cognizant of that. And this is for a few more months, they will have majorities in the Senate and the House. And some of the key major policy initiatives that she wanted to push up on Capitol Hill, they have effectively been blocked. And I think that that is where, you know, the midterm elections, she feels like from the government shutdown to the Epstein debacle over the releasing of these files, that those two issues have run afoul of what the party is effectively able to represent. And so I think now it's a question of, are there others like Marjorie Taylor Greene step out? Because I think she was anticipating a bigger coalition coming to her defense, but that's not what she got.
Yeah, and it's sort of in the middle of her statement where she talks about the Epstein stuff. Her break with Donald Trump about this has been very public, and people have talked about it a lot. But if listening to her interviews over the last month or so, it's not just the Epstein stuff. She's taken issue with House Republican leadership over this matter that Democrats were complaining about, the extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. She said she's been getting constituent calls about rural health care, about ACA subsidies. It sounded like she's had it on a lot of fronts.
Right. And she's mentioned tariffs are another example.
Yep.
That ultimately it's, you know, the consumers, it's people in her congressional district in Georgia that are paying the cost of it. And it runs perpendicular to the message that in 2024, they went and conveyed to constituents back home. And you can say an awful lot of things about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her political career. We have all watched up close from January 6th and her defense to this day of the pardons for those that were a part of the attack. And I think that that is where I think it is difficult to even place not just political figures, but more so people on the ground into boxes of ideologies here today. Allie, I know you and I have had extensive conversations about this, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a wild way, is representative of not a both sides America, but one in which, you know, if you go and talk to pretty much anybody, including viewers watching here tonight, they're on a myriad of issues. People have a different understanding and different lived experience and different things that compel them to politics and to particular candidates. And what you have heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene and from me talking with people close to her over the last weeks was sort of a disgust, a sadness, and a frustration that those within the party, the Republican Party, including Donald Trump, did not rally to her defense, or not even just rally to her defense, but they went on to attack her. I mean, Donald Trump calling her a traitor. And I think it's worth going back to 2022. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of those people calling for Liz Cheney and those folks that voted to impeach Donald Trump to be ousted. But in so many ways, that is where in the last month, she's acknowledged that she should have been better herself in the political discourse because she didn't speak out in the past years and allowed that sort of politics to play out. And now when it came directed her way, she was in the line of fire. And instead of just choosing not to even run, she's just leaving Congress altogether on January 5th.
Yeah, it'd be clear if anybody reads her statement or listens to the whole thing, she's not becoming a Democrat anytime soon. She had a lot of fire for Democrats and Democratic policies too, but most of it seemed to be focused on Donald Trump and MAGA and House leadership. Vaughn, thanks a million for getting us kicked off. An hour ago, you and I were not planning to talk, but I'm always happy that we do. Vaughn Hilliard for us.
Thanks, my friend. Be good.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, today was a wild day at the White House. Donald Trump brought New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani to the White House. It seemed like it was set up to be an ambush. Now, the White House clearly planned to sandbag the guy like they did with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier this year. Remember that? In fact, when announcing the visit itself, Trump called Mamdani a communist, and his administration handpicked the White House pool and stocked it with right-wing cranks and influencers. Republicans even held a previously scheduled show vote on the floor today for a resolution condemning socialism ahead of Mamdani's visit. Fox News had tons of coverage of how the whole thing would go down.
In a way, they both sort of need each other politically as well, right? So President Trump going into the midterms, you look at today's vote in the House brought on a resolution condemning socialism. That's no doubt going to be seen between now and the 2026 midterms.
Well, do they need each other politically? I don't really know. I don't think the president's going to be reaching out to Mamdani.
No, I mean they need each other to be like the leverage points against each other because of the extremes.
Yes, well, that's right.
Well, it's not quite right. At least it's not quite how it all went down. The President of the United States was undeniably charmed by the 34-year-old Democratic socialist. And to be clear, Mamdani didn't suck up to Trump. He stayed upbeat and relentlessly on message, as he has for the entire length of his mayoral campaign. Trump just seemed to genuinely like the guy.
We've just had a great meeting, a really good, very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. And I wanted to congratulate the mayor. He really ran an incredible race against, a lot of smart people, starting with the early primaries against some very tough people, very smart people. And he beat them easily. And I congratulated him. And we talked about some things in very strong common, like housing and getting housing built and food and prices. The better he does, the happier I am, I will say. There's no difference in party. There's no difference in anything. And we're going to be helping him to make everybody's dream come true, having a strong and very safe New York. And congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, if you're seeing that for the first time because you were working today, yes, your reaction right now that you're having right now is the reaction of everyone who is watching this, okay? And then once Trump opened things up for questions, he actually ended up running interference for Mamdani from some of the very same right-wing people he had invited to grill Mamdani.
Mr. President, Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zohran Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I know, but she's out there campaigning, and you say things sometimes in a campaign.
You used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
Just days ago, you referred to President Trump as a despot who betrayed the country. You said you'd be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and we are very clear about our positions and our views.
I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about.
That's okay. You can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
It's okay. You can just say, yes, I'm a fascist. Okay. Yeah, where were we? What? And going into this meeting, it always seemed plausible that Trump would wind up liking Mamdani. I mean, the mayor-elect perfectly fits the mold. He is a telegenic winner. He's got clear star power. He is, in one of Trump's favorite words, hot right now. But I don't think anyone expected the president to be quite so effusive, and Fox News was pretty clearly stunned.
I think J.D. Vance is jealous. I think the president wants to use him as a running mate. They really got along fantastic.
It was a surprise to see those two getting along as well as they did. A couple of times I asked the mayor-elect a tougher question, and the president almost helped him dodge it.
This was a love fest. It's a respect fest.
Respect fest. Now, Mayor-elect Mamdani is the one who requested the meeting, but I think it was the Trump administration that hoped to co-opt some of his credibility. I mean, Mamdani's whole deal, the driving force behind this successful and truly improbable campaign, has been, as you've heard 1,000 times now, the issue of affordability. And the first time, remember this, the first time many New York voters outside of his district heard of Mamdani was when he shared this video online basically exactly a year ago. And it was just a week after the election. And he went and spoke to voters in working class communities of color where Trump had overperformed, where he gained a huge vote share. And when asked why, the answer was clear: affordability.
The swing is because people want lower prices. They probably believe that Trump will give them that.
Market price, energy, gas,
la comida,
food.
Most of these people are working families. They're working 1 to 2, 3 jobs, and rent is expensive. Foods are going up, utility bills are up.
And that's your hope, to see a little bit more of an affordable life?
Absolutely. Now, that insight was key for a number of reasons. First, it was a proof of concept that running a campaign nearly singularly focused on the cost of living could be a successful strategy, both for Mamdani, who again was polling at 1%, and also we've seen Democrats nationwide, but also, and this is really important, because it completely undermines the Trump administration's entire theory of why they won. During the campaign and its immediate aftermath, Donald Trump knew that affordability was his best issue. Remember how much he talks about groceries, like he invented the term, and there's him posing with some Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Since then, everyone seems to have forgotten about it entirely in the Trump administration. The new theory that was adopted by Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and parroted all too often in the press, even before all the votes were counted a year ago, was that the election was actually a referendum on right-wing culture war, that Americans hated wokeness and they wanted to own the libs and they were mad at COVID restrictions and had enough of trans people. And the White House insisted the median voter basically had the politics of Stephen Miller. That was always total nonsense. Donald Trump won by 1.5 points because a relatively small number of voters in the overall pool of voters moved from one column to the other over the fact that stuff costs too much money. At this point, a year out, that's about as clear as day. That was Zohran Mamdani's central insight. Exactly a year ago today, basically. Trump, by contrast, has refused to learn the lesson of last year's election. He has done nothing on the cost of living. In fact, he has made the problem much worse with his unilateral tariffs. So now, nearly a year into this administration, J.D. Vance has to go out and beg the voters to be patient.
We understand that there's a lot more work to do. And the thing that I'd ask for the American people is a little bit of patience. This economy was not harmed in 10 months.
A little bit of patience. Why don't you guys hold your horses, cool down a little bit. We're going to get there. Now, Donald Trump repeatedly promised to bring down prices on day one, and not just lower the rate of increase, like bring them down. Everything would be solved right away. But the economy's worse than when he took over. The administration is spiraling. Trump's approval ratings are cratering. His own party's starting to buck him. And each day he inches closer and closer to being a complete and total lame duck. So today, the oldest man ever elected president invited the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist to the Oval Office and lavished praise on him and started talking about affordability. He even took to social media later in the day to post about what a great honor it was meeting Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City. He included 4 photos of the men together in various parts of the White House, and even this shot of Mamdani alone in front of a portrait of FDR, a truly improbable, hilarious, full circle moment for this administration and the formerly obscure figure now standing, smiling in the Oval Office.
This is our original reporting on those newly released emails from the deceased sex trafficker. So we turn to how Epstein tonight, who had used money and politically connected lawyers to duck the worst charges in his original sex crime case, how he continued that playbook. And that was clear, even as the legal walls closed in those final couple years before he was arrested, things looked tough. His legal team did change over time, but he continued to keep up with the 2 lawyers you see here, Ken Starr and Alan Dershowitz. And they brought more than courtroom experience. They had links to the very top of the government and business elites who run large parts of this country. The new emails shed more light on how Epstein and Starr seemed very close. They met regularly. Starr was at times a professional, where Epstein had been his client, a paid lawyer, but he also was noticeably warm. We see in these emails he signed them hugs and love, a cuddly retort.
A communist and a dictator walk into a bar.
I've had a lot of meetings with the heads of major countries. Nobody cared. This meeting that you people have gone, outside you have hundreds of people waiting. This is just a small little group. For some reason, the press has found this to be a very interesting meeting. The biggest people in the world, they come over from countries nobody cares. But they did care about this meeting.
The press was foaming at the mouth. They thought it'd be the biggest brawl since Zelensky.
Just days ago, you referred to President Trump as a despot who had betrayed the country. You said you would be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting.
Let's try that again.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
The name calling, that's politics. Trump's been giving it and taking it his whole career. This sends a signal to Democrats that Trump's really about business. And if he really was a dictator, would you let some guy come into your house and call you that? No. And did Mamdani go in there and hide his face like Big Gretch? No. Zohran's mayor, Trump's president, so let's get down to it.
I think you're going to have, hopefully, a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
Trump and Zohran want the same thing for the city. They both want it to be safe and affordable. They might not always agree on how to get there, but instead of bickering, they found common ground.
He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And, we actually, people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
Not just housing. Trump wants to rein in the electric company and help Mamdani fight crime. Trump says we're not going to throw good money after bad. He's not going to be sending money for government-run grocery stores. We're talking common sense stuff that helps the middle class. Some of their playbooks overlap.
I spoke to New Yorkers who had voted for the president last November. I heard again and again 2 major reasons. One was that they wanted an end to forever wars. They wanted an end to the taxpayer dollars we had funding violations of human rights, and they wanted to address the cost of living crisis.
A lot of my voters actually voted for him, and I'm okay with that.
Trump looks at Zohran like young Bernie, political outsiders who have some wacky ideas but have compassion for the working man and a lot of love from their base. Some Bernie bros voted for Trump the same way some MAGA folks in Queens voted for Zohran. They have different policies with the same goals. making life more affordable for the average Joe. The difference between Zoran and Bernie, Mamdani beat the odds and the establishment.
I think he's different. All right, I think he's different, and that can be in a very positive way. But I think he's different than, you know, your typical guy, runs, wins, becomes mayor.
Love him or hate him, Zoran's fresh, and Trump likes to get his hands on new brands. He can work with anyone, Jews, Muslims, communists, little rocket man. The New York relationship is based on action and results, not labels and insults. Zoran might be a communist today, but tomorrow, who knows?
He's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot. From when I first came to office. I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people.
Mamdani might come to realize some of his ideas don't work. I mean, he really never had a real job before. He's a little immature, but with Trump's help, Mamdani can help New York. And if he screws it up, that's on him. It kind of seemed like Trump knew Mamdani said a lot of things to get elected and now knows he has to govern and might have it in him.
Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
The president's giving the new mayor a fresh start and the benefit of the doubt. Whatever happens, you can't say Trump didn't try. This was great to see for the country. If Trump and Zoran can get along, we all can. Mamdani came across as gracious and respectful, but he still stood his ground. Why is that so hard for most Democrats to do? Mamdani acted like more of a man, more of a problem solver than Schumer, who's 3 times his age.
Do you view the mayor-elect as the true leader of the Democrat Party?
I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats? I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City, and I keep my horizons firmly on New York City.
Humble, too, huh? There could be a new movement forming. Left-wing and right-wing populists have the potential to unite to fight for the working class. If they can't unite, well, then one has to crush the other. I think we know who wins. But Trump's outflanking Democrats here. He grabbed the only guy they have focused on the cost of living and the quality of life and brought him under his wing. Mamdani and Trump both make establishment Democrats look petty and ignorant, old and feckless. The media couldn't process what happened.
An extraordinary, flabbergasting scene in the Oval Office today. While some may have expected tension or even fireworks in the first ever meeting between New York City's first ever Muslim mayor and the first president to ever have called for a ban on all Muslims entering the country, instead, we got handshakes, pats on the back, niceties. No, really.
After all these years, they still don't get the guy they report on every day. They thought Trump was going to go waterboard him and shave his beard and send him back to Africa. Obama doesn't like seeing his Rainbow Coalition rally around a skinnier messiah with a funnier name. Barry's trying to make himself the mentor-in-chief. Barack and Pelosi huddled dozens of Democrats into a house and gave them a little pep talk. Obama put out some soda, water, crackers, and crudité, and gave Democrats his keys to success. I get feeling discouraged sometimes. I get feeling worn out, tired, and embattled. But in our second term, we used to pass out stickers. We do not succumb to cynicism. Cynicism is our enemy. Stickers? That's Barack's cure? Don't be cynical? That's your pep talk? He says he wants to build a party that can survive without him. Barack's been out of office for a decade. Take a hike. Republicans aren't asking George Bush for help. They grew into a new party and let Bush enjoy retirement. The Obamas should do the same because they're not really helping anyway. The brothers didn't listen to Barack, and now Michelle's saying America's too sexist for a lady president. MSNBC is MS angry.
It's just an insane conclusion to draw. Aside from the fact that that's just so destructive and ridiculous and sexist and wrong, if people want to backlash the antidote to Trump, in many cases that is women, that's women of color.
Yeah, Kamala Harris is why we should nominate a woman again.
We agree, Mika. Kamala should run again. When MS and the Obamas are brawling, you know the base is breaking. And they're not just broken, they're broke. The DNC had to take out a $15 million loan last month because they blew all their cash to win a few blue states 3 weeks back. They got some power back, but they still can't get it together. The Sombrero Boys botched the shutdown, and now the Epstein files are exploding like a Coke boat. They thought they could Epstein Trump, but it ricocheted and hit them right in the Harris.
Madam Vice President, can you tell us why your administration didn't release the Epstein files? Can you tell us? 4 years and you guys didn't do it. What's your take on it?
Now the whole country knows that a pedophile funded their party while they begged him for dinner dates and dating advice and texted about TDS. But if you think that's wrong, you're racist.
The idea or the audacity to decide that you want to strip a black woman of her committee assignment because she was texting with Epstein, but you don't even want to dig into the nitty-gritty about what the president of the United States was up to?
Bill and Hillary Clinton have their depositions scheduled in just a few weeks. Comer says if they ditch, that means contempt, and contempt could mean jail. How much you want to bet Bill transitions so he can serve time in a women's prison?
Ladies and gentlemen, do you really think that Donald Trump is going to sign off on releasing the Epstein files and not have a boatload of stuff that he's going to throw in the Democrats' direction? Trump has become a verb. He's trumping the Democrats at every turn, playing them like a fiddle.
Every time Democrats try to light the fire of resistance, they end up burning down the party. Now Eric Swalwell wants to rise from the ashes like a phoenix.
I came here tonight, Jimmy, to tell you and your audience that I'm running to be the next governor of California.
Is California ready for First Lady Fang Fang? It's anyone's race. He's up against Katie Porter, who scolded her husband with a steaming pot of mashed potatoes and storms out of interviews if she doesn't like the cut of your jib. Once he beats the mortgage fraud rap, I'm sure he'll clean Katie's clock. Why is it that every Democrat has baggage? A House Democrat just got indicted for stealing $5 million.
Thanksgiving this year is exactly 25% less than last year, so that's good for New York, good for everybody. But I just want to congratulate. I think you're going to have hopefully a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am. I will say there's no difference in party. There's no difference in anything. And we're going to be helping him to make everybody's dream come true, having a strong and very safe New York. And congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Please.
I appreciated the meeting with the president, and as he said, it was a productive meeting focused on a place of shared admiration and love, which is New York City, and the need to deliver affordability to New Yorkers, the 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out, and I appreciated the time with the president, I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please?
President Trump, Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I've got a question for you and then also one for the mayor-elect. For you, you've referred to Mr. Mamdani as a communist. Could you describe why you feel that way? And also, will you do anything to stop him from arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu if he visits New York?
Well, we didn't discuss your second part of the question. And on your first part, I mean, he's got views a little out there, but who knows? I mean, we're going to see what works, or he's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot. Changed a lot from when I first came to office. It's now quite a while ago. It's quite a while. My first term was great. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We're doing even better now. We're doing much better now than we did even the first term. And I can tell you some of my views have changed. And we had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he's going to be. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually, and some very liberal people. He won't surprise them because they already like him.
And Mr. Mamdani, it sounds like you had a productive discussion, but just days ago you referred to President Trump as a despot who had betrayed the country. You said you would be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together. Yes, please.
Mr. President, Anthony Marshak from MTV Lebanon. I would like to ask you a question about the Middle East regarding, you did said that Hezbollah in Lebanon is not in a good position. And Lebanon now is the final unresolved after Gaza and Syria. Given your assessment, like what do you say for the Lebanese today? It's the Independence Day in Lebanon. And what is your next move to push toward disarmament? The disarmament of Hezbollah.
Well, we are pushing for total disarmament of Hamas and, frankly, everybody else. And we actually have peace in the Middle East. As you know, the King of Saudi Arabia just left yesterday. We had some great meetings, and he's made a contribution toward the United States of more than $1 trillion. We have now over $20 trillion coming in. No country has ever had anything like that, not even close. If you go to $2 trillion or $1 trillion, it's a lot. We have $20 or $21 trillion. I think that Hezbollah has been a problem in Lebanon, big problem. We're working with safe streets. It's not going to be a success for him, and I'm okay with that.
I have this hat as well.
I'll do that. I'll sign it. Give it to me. I'll sign it in a minute. That's pretty good.
Mr. President, you've threatened to send federal troops to New York City. You both have differences when it comes to ICE agents in New York City. Mr. Mamdani, you've called ICE a rogue government entity. I wonder how you reconcile your differences on both of those issues.
Well, I think we're going to work them out. And I think that if we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, you know, we want to get them out. And the mayor wants to have peace. We discussed this at great length, actually, maybe more than anything else. He wants to have a safe New York. Ultimately, a safe New York is going to be a great New York. If it's not safe, no matter how well we do with pricing and with anything else, we can talk about anything you want. If you don't have safe streets, it's not going to be a success. So we're going to work together. We're going to make sure that if there are horrible people there, we want to get them out. I think he wants to get them out maybe more than I do. So we'll work together. We discussed it at great length. Yes, please.
Yeah, two questions, if I may. One for you, Mr. President, on BBC in a second. But first of all, for the mayor-elect. You're both from different parts of the political spectrum. You're both populists, though, and I just wonder to what extent the president's campaign style, his techniques, his social media use inspired any part of your campaign.
Well, I actually told the president that, you know, so much of the focus of our campaign has been on the cost of living crisis. And when we asked those New Yorkers who had voted for the president, when we saw an increase in his numbers in New York City, that came back to the same issue: cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And they spoke about the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of Con Ed, the cost of childcare. And too often, politicians are looking to lecture to New Yorkers what they should care about as opposed to listen. And when we spoke to those
Hi, everyone. I've always represented the common American man and woman as a member of the House of Representatives, which is why I've always been despised in Washington, D.C., and just never fit in. Americans are used by the political industrial complex of both political parties, election cycle after election cycle, in order to elect whichever side can convince Americans to hate the other side more. And the results are always the same. No matter which way the political pendulum swings, Republican or Democrat, nothing ever gets better for the common American man or woman. The debt goes higher, corporate and global interests remain Washington's sweethearts, American jobs continue to be replaced, whether it's by illegal labor or legal labor by visas or just shipped overseas. Small businesses continue to be swallowed by big corporations. Americans' hard-earned tax dollars always fund foreign wars, foreign aid, and foreign interest, and the spending power of the dollar continues to decline. The average American family can no longer survive on a single breadwinner's income, as both parents have to work in order to simply survive. And today, many in my children's generation feel hopeless for their future and don't think they will ever realize the American dream. And that breaks my heart. I ran for Congress in 2020 and have fought every single day believing that Make America Great Again meant America first. I have one of the most conservative voting records in Congress, defending the First Amendment, Second Amendment, unborn babies because I believe God creates life at conception, and I love to fight for the little guy. Strong, safe borders, I have fought hard for that. I've fought against COVID tyrannical insanity and mandated mass vaccinations, and I've never voted to fund foreign wars with your hard-earned tax dollars. However, with almost 1 year into our majority, the legislature has been mostly sidelined. We endured an 8-week shutdown, wrongly, resulting in the House not working for the entire time, and we are entering campaign season, which means all courage leaves and only safe campaign re-election mode is turned on in the House of Representatives. During the longest shutdown in our nation's history, I raged against my own speaker and my own party for refusing to proactively work diligently to pass the plan to save Americans' health care and protect Americans from outrageous, overpriced, and unaffordable health insurance policies. The House should have been in session working every day to fix this disaster. But instead, America was force-fed disgusting political drama once again from both sides of the aisle on television every single day. My bills, which reflect many of President Trump's executive orders, like calling for a new census counting Americans only to draw new districts, making English the official language of the U.S., making it a felony to medically trans a minor, and other bills like eliminating capital gains taxes on the sale of your primary home and eliminating H-1B visas just sit. They all sit collecting dust. That's how it is for most members of Congress bills. The Speaker never brings them to the floor for a vote. Many common Americans are no longer easily convinced by paid political propaganda spokespersons and consultants on TV and paid shills on social media obediently serving with cult-like conviction to force others to swallow the political party talking points. Because they know how much credit card debt they have, they know how much their bills have gone up over the past 5 years, they actually do their own grocery shopping and know food costs too much, their rent has increasingly gone up and up. They have been outbid by corporate asset managers too many times when they put in an offer to buy a house. They have been laid off after being forced to train their visa-holding replacement. The college degree they were told to earn only left them in debt with no big six-figure salary. They see more homeless people than ever on their own community streets. They can't afford health insurance or practically any insurance, and they just aren't stupid. These are the people I represent and love because that is who all of my family and friends are, common Americans. I have been blessed to represent the 14th District of Georgia for 5 years. The district is filled with some of the most wonderful, kind-hearted, God-fearing, patriotic, hardworking people you will ever meet. Good, regular, common Americans. I've worked hard to bring taxpayer dollars back home to help district needs. I impeached Biden's Secretary of Homeland after watching my constituents die as he facilitated dangerous open border invasion into America. And I led the effort to defund hard-left politically biased NPR and PBS and the corrupt USAID, and I did that as chair of the DOJ subcommittee. I have fought harder than almost any other elected Republican to elect Donald Trump and Republicans to power. I traveled the country for years. I spent millions of my own money. I missed precious time with my family that I can never get back. And I showed up in places like outside the New York courthouse in Collect Pond Park against a raging leftist mob as Trump faced Democrat lawfare. Meanwhile, most of the establishment Republicans who secretly hate him and who stabbed him in the back and never defended him against anything have all been welcomed in right after the election. And I will never forget the day I had to leave my mother's side as my father had brain surgery to remove cancerous tumors in order to fly to Washington, D.C. to defend President Trump and vote no against the Democrats' second impeachment in 2021. My poor father and my poor mother, it was way too much for all of us. Through it all, I never changed or went back on my campaign promises and only disagreed in a few areas, like my stance against H-1Bs replacing American jobs, AI state moratoriums, debt for life 50-year mortgage scams, standing strongly against all involvement in foreign wars, and demanding the release of the Epstein files. Other than that, my voting record has been solidly with my party and the president. Loyalty should be a two-way street, and we should be able to vote our conscience and represent our district's interests because our job title is literally representative. America first should mean America first and only Americans first, with no other foreign country ever being attached to America first in our halls of government. Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for. However, while yes, hurtful, my heart remains filled with joy, my life is filled with happiness, and my true convictions remain unchanged because my self-worth is not defined by a man, but instead by God who created everything in existence. You see, I have never valued power, titles, or attention in spite of all the wrong assumptions about me. I do not cling to those things because they are meaningless and empty traps that hold too many people in Washington. I believe in term limits and do not think Congress should be a lifelong career or an assisted living facility. My only goal and desire has ever been to hold the Republican Party accountable for the promises it makes to the American people and put America first. And I have fought against Democrats' damaging policies like the Green New Deal, wide open, deadly, unsafe border policies, and the trans agenda on children and against women. With that has brought years of nonstop, never-ending personal attacks, death threats, lawfare, ridiculous slander and lies about me that most people could never withstand even for a single day. It has been unfair and wrong, not only to me, but especially to my family, but it's been wrong to my district as well. I have too much self-respect and dignity. I love my family way too much, and I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. It's all so absurd and completely unserious. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better. If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class, that can never ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well. There is no plan to save the world or a 4D chess game being played. When common American people realize and understand that the political industrial complex of both parties is ripping this country apart, that not one elected leader like me is able to stop Washington's machine from gradually destroying our country, and instead the reality is that they, common Americans, the people, possess the real power over Washington, then I'll be here by their side to rebuild it. Until then, I'm going back to the people that I love, to live my life to the fullest as I always have, and I look forward to a new path ahead. I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026, and I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Those New Yorkers who had voted for the president when we saw an increase in his numbers in New York City that came back to the same issue: cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And they spoke about the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of Con Ed, the cost of childcare. And too often politicians are looking to lecture to New Yorkers what they should care about as opposed to listen. And when we spoke to those voters who voted for President Trump, we heard them speak about cost of living. We focused on that same cost of living, and that's where I am really looking forward to delivering for New Yorkers in partnership with the president on the affordability agenda.
If I may, you told me we have to work a little bit. We talked about Con Edison. We have to work a little bit on getting the prices because, we've gotten fuel prices way down, but it hasn't shown up in Con Edison. And we're going to have to talk to them. If we're sending them fuel at a much lower price than it was a year ago, which is true, we have to get Con Edison to start lowering their rates.
Absolutely.
And if I may, last week you told me you were pushing ahead with your plans to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. You're going to speak to Prime Minister Starmer as well. Is there any progress or any updates on those issues?
Well, we get along very well with the Prime Minister. We made a deal with UK. I like him. He's a fine person. And, I think they have some big energy problems. They've got windmills all over the place. They're going to have to start using other methods because their energy is out of control. Talking about in the UK, it's out of control. And he's got that problem. He's got a big immigration problem, as you know, and he's got a big energy problem. And we talk about it. He's a good man. Prime Minister's a good man.
You have a chance to speak this week?
I haven't spoken this week.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Zelensky, or do you intend to meet with him, President Zelensky, about your plan? Are you going to meet with him?
I've spoken with their people. We have a plan. It's horrible what's happening. It's a war that should have never happened. It would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame. And I thought they should have acted quicker. But it's a cold winter, and a lot of the you talk about utilities, but a lot of the big energy producing plants have been under attack, to put it mildly, to put it nicely. We have a way of getting peace, or we think we have a way of getting peace. He's going to have to approve it. Just so sad, so many people. Last month they lost 25,000 soldiers. This is something, we haven't seen anything like this since the Second World War. And they're averaging 6,000 or 7,000 a week between the two of them, dead soldiers. And it goes on, and I think they're getting reasonably close. But I don't want to predict. I would have said that would have been one of my early ones. I did 8 peace deals of countries, including in India, Pakistan. You could even go, in fact, they're coming here in a week or two, go to the Congo and Rwanda. That was 10 million people dead, and we worked something out on that. But so many. And the one I thought would have been, for me, because I have a very good relationship with President Putin, I thought that would have been maybe quicker. But it does take 2 to tango. And now you just see all the death. And, it doesn't affect us other than the fact that we don't want to see all those people that really, it's on the other side of the ocean. It's a war that should have never happened. It did happen. I blame the person also sitting right behind this desk. This is a war that should have never happened, and it wouldn't have happened if I were president. But we're trying to save a lot of lives. They're losing 25,000 lives over the last short period of time. That's Ukrainian and Russian, and it's a shame.
Mr. President, I want to ask the mayor-elect about a House resolution just passed overwhelmingly to condemn socialism, including with 86 Democrats, all of House Dem leadership, and the Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, despite his endorsement of you. What's your reaction to that?
I have to be honest with you, I focused very little on resolutions. Frankly, I've been focusing...
Condemn socialism.
I understand. I think the focus is on the work at hand. I can tell you I am someone who is a democratic socialist. I've been very open about that. And I know there might be differences about ideology, but the place of agreement is the work that needs to be done to make New York City affordable. That's what I look forward to.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay.
It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you also about this Ukraine plan. President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal proposal...
He doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of tenuous about it.
He'll have to like it. And if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess.
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that accurate?
At some point, he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago. The ultimate deal would have been if it never started. That would have been the good deal. That could have been done, too, if you had the right president. But you didn't have the right president.
Mr. President, the cost of living is something that you and Mr. Mamdani seem to agree on. Democrats have run New York City for a long time, Mr. Mamdani. Do you see Democrat policy specifically as being a problem? And I'd like that be a question that both of you could answer in New York City.
Look, I think that there are many things in our city where we have to own the responsibility of it, things that existed long before the president was the president. And those are also part of the message of our campaign, was to take on a broken politics of the past. And I ran against a number of candidates who represented different versions of that past. And what we found time and again is that working people were left behind in the politics of our city. And what we're looking to do is put those people right back at the heart of our politics so that we don't have a situation where we're in the wealthiest city in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 5 can't even afford $2.90 for a Metro card.
Mr. President, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost, the new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. It's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were, we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years under the Biden administration. And we've got inflation down now to a normal number. It's going to go even a little bit lower than that. Katie, do you have something?
Mr. President, thank you so much. Mr. Mamdani often talks about New York City being covered by international law, that they will follow international law. Doesn't often talk about the U.S. Constitution. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of it can be covered by international law, local law. It's covered by a lot of laws. But it's covered by U.S. law. Are you referring to anything in particular?
He just says that they're a city that endorses and enforces international law. Is that at odds with U.S. law at all?
Would you want to respond?
Yeah, I think what I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want.
Will you work with ICE then? Mr. President, will you work with ICE then?
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
we discuss crime. More than ICE per se, we discuss crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to And he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction. And he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And we actually, people would be shocked. But I want to see the same thing.
Mr. Mamdani, the anti-Israel protesters.
Yeah, Mr. President, I wanted to know one of the policies as well that Mayor-elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see.
But to be clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
that's what you said.
No, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted a synagogue in New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you've threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad. And we don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say, subject to what policies are being said. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing. Yeah. That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, named de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job. He may have different views, but in many ways, we were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea, because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on. Tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought. And when he was put out of the race, I think quite unfairly, if you want to know the truth, many of the Bernie Sanders voters voted for me. And I felt very comfortable, frankly, in seeing that and saying that. And, it just turned out to be a statistical truth. But no, I feel very comfortable. I would feel very, very comfortable being in New York, and I think much more so after the meeting. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for you, but a very quick one for the mayor. Why did you fly here? Aren't trains greener?
I'll use every form of transit, and I want to make sure that they're all affordable in New York City, and that's why making buses fast and free is a centerpiece of our campaign.
There is a bus that goes.
I know, but if he flew, that's a lot quicker, too.
Your time is
he's working very hard. For him to be, it's a very That's a very long drive. I'll stick up for you. You know, the plane takes you 30 minutes and driving takes you a
And
long
Mr.
time.
President, I was wondering if you could clear up some confusion around a Washington Post report. There was this explosive report that the Coast Guard is no longer going to characterize swastikas and nooses as hate symbols. DHS called that a lie and fake news. Can you clear up?
I don't know anything about it. When was this written?
I think yesterday.
Well, look, the Coast Guard's an incredible group of people. I know them very well. We just ordered a lot of new Coast Guard cutters. Beautiful, the most magnificent ship. They look like yachts with lots of guns on them. So I don't know. I haven't seen any report like that, but certainly we want them to remain a great force, and they are.
Mr. President, you're a peacemaker, and you did the peace in all the 9 months around the world. I would like to ask Mr. Mamdani, you've accused the U.S. government of committing genocide in Gaza while President Trump was working on peace. Why that?
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken about our government funding it. And I shared with the president in our meeting about the concern that many New Yorkers have of wanting their tax dollars to go towards the benefit of New Yorkers and their ability to afford basic dignity. And what we see right now is we're in the 9th consecutive year of more than 100,000 school children being homeless in our city. And there's a desperate need not only for the following of human rights, but also the following through on the promises we've made New Yorkers. And I appreciated the meeting we had and the work that we can do.
Do you agree that President Trump did do a peace and he worked hard to make the peace? Because he worked hard to do the peace in the Middle East and everywhere. Do you agree with that?
I appreciate all efforts towards peace, and I shared with President Trump that when I spoke to Trump voters on Hillside Avenue, including one of whom was a pharmacist that spoke about how President Trump's father actually went to that pharmacy not too far from Jamaica Estates, that people were tired of seeing our tax dollars fund endless wars. And I also believe that we have to follow through on the international human rights, and I know that still today those are being violated, and that continues to be work that has to be done no matter where we're speaking of.
Mr. President,
question for Mr. Thank you, Mr. President. Do you view the mayor-elect as the true leader of the Democrat Party, and do you think Leader Schumer's and Leader Jeffries, have to follow his lead?
Well, look, I hope they have great leaders. This is a man that right now I think is focused in New York City. I really think he has a chance to do a great job. We're going to help him, but I really think he has a chance to do a great job. But I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats. I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City, and I keep my horizons firmly on New York City, and I appreciate the meeting with the president, which focused again on the 5 boroughs and whether New Yorkers could afford to live there.
By the way, being the mayor of New York City is a big deal.
Absolutely.
I always said, one of the things I would love to be someday is the mayor of New York City. Being the mayor of New York, and especially now, because I think you're at really a turning point, one way or the other. It could go great, or it can go in a different direction. And I think you really have a chance to make it great.
Mr. President, you say you love New York City. Mr. Mamdani, does New York City love President Trump?
New York City loves a future that is affordable. And I can tell you that there were more New Yorkers who voted for President Trump in the most recent presidential election because of that focus on cost of living. And I'm looking forward to working together to deliver on that affordability agenda.
I got a lot of votes. One more, go ahead. 1 or 2 more, go ahead. The press has eaten this thing up. I've had a lot of meetings with the heads of major countries. Nobody cared. This meeting that you people have gone crazy. Outside you have hundreds of people waiting. This is just a small little group. For some reason, the press has found this to be a very interesting meeting. The biggest people in the world, they come over from countries nobody cares. But they did care about this meeting, and it was a great meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was going to ask you exactly that. Why do you think there's so much more, so much excitement around this than even some foreign leaders?
Because I think he's different. All right, I think he's different, and that can be in a very positive way. But I think he's different than, your typical guy runs, wins, becomes mayor maybe, and nothing exciting. Because he has a chance to really do something great for New York. New York is at a very critical point, and he does need the help of the federal government to really succeed, and we're going to be helping him. But he's different than, your average candidate. He came out of nowhere. I said he has a great campaign manager standing over there. He came out of nowhere. What'd you start off at 1 or 2? And then I watched. I said, who is this guy? He was at 1, then he was at 3, then he was at 5, then he was at 9. Then he went up to 17. I said, that's getting a little bit interesting, right? And then all of a sudden he wins a primary that nobody expected he was going to win. It's a great a great tribute. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he did.
I'll just add one thing to what the president said. Is one thing I also appreciated is in our meeting to appreciate a portrait of FDR and the incredible work that was done with the New Deal, and also in thinking about what it can look like when the federal government and New York City government work together to deliver on affordability. It can be transformative.
You know, we have a great portrait of FDR that I found in the vaults that was missing for years. I found it and I put it up. He's a Democrat, to the best of my knowledge. He's a Democrat. And when the mayor saw that portrait, he said, "Sir, do you mind if I have a picture taken by that portrait?" It's an amazing portrait. I hope the picture comes out good. But it's an amazing portrait in the cabinet room. So he's a big fan of the New Deal, I guess, and of FDR. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said that you both spoke about crime.
Yeah.
There are many police officers set to come off the rolls at the end of this year in New York City. Are you going to allow those police to be replaced with police officers, actual cops? And are you going to require that that happens? Would there be some consequence if the
Well, I hope
staff...
it happens, but again, that's going to be ultimately the mayor's decision.
What's your answer?
Is that I look forward to delivering public safety with the NYPD, and I've said over the course of our campaign that we have the number of police officers today. They are the ones that's budgeted about 35,000 headcount. And I think the key thing is that we have to make it easier for police to focus on police work, not ask them to respond to 200,000 mental health calls a year.
So is that a reduction from what you're at right now? Are you committing to maintaining the same level of cops?
I've committed over the course of the campaign to maintain the 35,000. That's the headcount that we had through the campaign.
And not replace them with caseworkers, social workers?
No, I've said that's the headcount that we want. What we need to do is make sure they can focus on serious crime.
And he just retained a great police commissioner, I believe, right?
Yes, we did. Commissioner Tisch.
If the newspapers are correct.
That one they're correct about.
He retained, I think, somebody that is she's a good friend of some of the people in my family, of Ivanka, and they say she's really good, really competent, and he just retained her, so that's a good sign.
Mr. President, are there still topics that you see the two of you disagreeing on in the future? And do you think you'll have more meetings like this?
There will be topics that we disagree on. I think we'll probably come to a conclusion, and ultimately he'll convince me, or I'll convince him. You know, it's for the good of New York. Ultimately, it's for the good of New York. I don't care about affiliations or parties or anything else. I want to see if this city could be unbelievable, if he could be a spectacular success, I'd be very happy.
Do you think you guys will meet more in the future too?
Sure.
Do you think you'll meet again in the future, throughout the administration?
I think we will. I hope we do. I enjoyed the meeting. We had a great meeting. Please.
Mr. President, Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zora Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but she's out there campaigning, and you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of divisive?
She's a very capable person.
Isn't
But
that kind of
you really have to ask her about that. But I don't particularly. I think I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again. And I can say again, because New York was great. When I came down to Washington initially, the city was so hot. It was doing great. We were having some telltale signs of problems. We had a mayor that was not doing a great job, but still, it was moving along. And it went bad. It really went, pretty bad. And I think it's been at lower points, but it went pretty bad. I think he can bring it back. Now, the question is, will he bring it back all the way? Will he bring it back greater than ever before, which is, I guarantee, that's his wish. I think he wants to make it greater than ever before. And if he can, we'll be out there cheering. I'll be cheering for him. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Is there a reason you chose not to answer the question about the synagogue protest and safety of the city?
Rooting out anti-Semitism across the 5 boroughs and protecting Jewish New Yorkers and every New Yorker who calls the city home.
Thank you for asking everything, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What's the door? What's that door? Not going to be single.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation announcement late last night sending shockwaves across the Republican base after tensions between the Congresswoman and President Trump soared in recent weeks on affordability, and then he withdrew his endorsement of her in the upcoming midterms. Madison Scarpino is live in our Atlanta bureau with the latest. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Mike. Well, since the beginning, Greene has been one of the most outspoken supporters of President Trump. But her recent criticism of him on things like the Epstein files and healthcare led to him calling her a traitor and wacky. So she's now saying that she does not want to put her congressional district through a hateful and hurtful primary.
I've always been despised in Washington, D.C., and just never fit in.
Greene posting a 10-minute video last night slamming what she calls the political industrial complex. And she goes on to say no matter which party is in power, quote, nothing gets better for the common American man or woman. She also criticizes the recent government shutdown, the cost of living, foreign aid, and more. Greene then talks about her long-standing dedication to the president and how her loyalty should be a, quote, two-way street.
My only goal and desire has ever been to hold the Republican Party accountable for the promises it makes to the American people and put America first. With that has brought years of nonstop, never-ending personal attacks, death threats, lawfare, ridiculous slander and lies about me that most people could never withstand even for a single day.
President Trump responding to all of this today, saying in part, quote, Marjorie Taylor Greene, because of plummeting poll numbers and not wanting to face a primary challenger with a strong Trump endorsement, where she would have no chance of winning, has decided to call it quits. And the president goes on to thank Greene for her service to the country. And now Greene's resignation, Mike, will soon make the Republican House majority even slimmer. That number it'll bring it down to a number of just 218 members. Back to you.
Madison Scarpino, live in Atlanta. Madison, many thanks. For more, let's bring in New York Republican Congresswoman and House Ways and Means Committee member Nicole Maliotakis. Congresswoman, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So first to the big Oval Office meeting yesterday. You heard the president just moments ago reiterate that it was a very good meeting. What's your reaction to that, and are you surprised he connected with the socialist New York City mayor-elect?
Yeah, I mean, they seemed a little too chummy, in my opinion, but I guess it was a good meeting and they were able to find some common ground. The problem is, these people who are self-proclaimed socialists, they are wolves in sheep's clothing. And so I'm not very optimistic, although I am hopeful that they'll be able to find some common ground for the betterment of New York. We need to make sure that New York continues to get its fair share of funding when it comes for transportation, infrastructure, and our hospital system, as well as public safety and counterterrorism. But in no way can the federal government be supportive of a socialist and communist agenda. We have a mayor who says he wants to purchase private property and turn it into communes, purchase supermarkets and have them government run. He wants to seize the means of production. And so there's a real contrast there. And also, I don't know that their views of how you get to